Hey, welcome to the Froggy Five podcast. I'm your host, Jim Fralick, founder and managing partner of Froggy Companies. And today I'm joined with Michael Kramer. He's the founder and CEO of Free by Real Estate, Fortune 8 Fund. He's the fund manager. He helps others create wealth through investing in rental real estate and primarily value-add apartments. So he along with his family, they've invested in over 1,000 rental units as passive investors. But then his sons Michael, Luke, and his wife Lucy together, they cover all the whole span of jobs within the industry, including as a licensed contractor. I want to talk to you about that a little bit, and over 400 income producing rentals, which is a lot of that's the part that's not passive. So you probably tell me some stuff about the pain and headaches with that, because we've just done a few of those. My wife is our property manager for some short-term and long-term rentals, and I'm currently saying never again. Never again on my side. I'm just not good on that front. So welcome, Michael. We don't know each other very well, but we're going to get to know each other here today.
Thank you, Jimmy. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. So you're out in Nebraska?
Yes, sir.
Did you say
born and raised in Nebraska. Been here my whole life. The only other place I've lived is Iowa, but I don't publicize that. Just a friendly rivalry between the river. The Missouri River divides us, so it's just a friendly rivalry between Iowa and Nebraska.
Okay.
My wife's I have a brother. I give her a hard time.
I see. Inter-rival family. Are you guys football fans too?
Absolutely. Yes.
I mean, you have to be in Nebraska, right? Like
we do.
In Iowa. I have a brother-in-law. He went to Iowa State, but he's Iowa. He grew up on a farm out in Iowa. So,
yeah. Well,
I know a little bit about that region.
The Iowa State game was just on last week, I believe, and it was a fun game to watch. Iowa State got the better of them.
Yeah, I saw that by a point, I think, right?
I think you're right, yeah.
I'm just sort of tracking from a distance. Last time I saw we'll get into real estate in a second, but the last time, since you remind me, Nebraska, I don't have a lot of Nebraska connections. Although we are considering going into business with a guy that's going to do a modular factory out there. That's just a relationship we've struck up in the last few weeks. But 1990 was the last time I saw a Nebraska game in person, and it was the Citrus Bowl. I went to Georgia Tech at the time, and we were undefeated. And the way that things were set up back then, if you remember, before they had any playoffs, based on your lack of gray hair, I'm guessing I'm a little bit older than you, but otherwise you're just aging really well. But it was 1990. I was in college. We had to, because we won the ACC, the Georgia Tech did. We had to play Nebraska, the winner of the Big 12 or whatever it was. I forget at the time, or maybe it was the second person. The way it was, ACC was so weak back then, and so it ended up being the number one team in the country facing the number 21 team, and Georgia Tech beat Nebraska pretty big that game. But then, like, Colorado had one loss in the rankings. It was very controversial what happened that year.
Yeah, I remember those days when we didn't have the playoff or the clear champs in these divisions were in the leagues, and so it made it more complicated and relying more on the coaches poll and the AP poll to try to sort it out.
Yeah, it wasn't that great, and I don't even know who's coaching. My son was on the University of Oregon football team for a couple seasons.
Oh, wow.
And the guy who was the offensive coordinator,
Scott Frost.
I can't think of his name right. Yeah, he became the head coach at Nebraska. He's not there anymore, though, right?
He's not.
Is he still there?
No, he's not. He was here for, I believe, 4 years and had an abysmal record and kind of got ran out of town. He's a hometown boy, like born and raised Nebraska and played Nebraska and led us to a national championship in '97. And so to have him kind of go out in flames was shocking, frankly, to a lot of us.
It really was. I remember that. Yeah, I remember thinking he was such a good play caller. But I think what happened was, I mean, I don't know. I didn't follow the Nebraska side of that really well. But I know from the Chip Kelly side, who's originally from New Hampshire, where we're at, sort of the speed offense. I mean, for a few years, it just caught everybody off guard, right? Like, just like flying everything. And then eventually they realized that we got to balance the other side of the ball, and people started catching up with it. So I think that that speed of playing the calls. It just wasn't as big of an advantage by the time he got to Nebraska, probably.
Well, it was funny at his press conference where he was hired. He was asked, because he came from Oregon to UCF as the head coach at UCF, Central Florida, and they ran a similar offense, more of a spread, a lot of athletes, smaller frames. And he was asked, how do you expect that offense to bear in the Big Ten? How are you going to adjust to the Big Ten? And he said, well, the Big Ten is going to have to adjust to us. And little did he know that the Big Ten did not adjust at all. We got mopped up in most cases with the game plan and the smaller bodies. But now we're kind of back to this old school Big 12. The games are won and lost in the trenches. And so more power football, that's kind of what the Big Ten's about.
I mean, that's the history of the Big Ten. I forgot he went to UCF and did incredible there, right? First,
he did.
Yeah, so that's why.
He claims he won a national championship at UCF because they beat Auburn and went undefeated.
Right.
So I think
that's
they were
right. That was incredible. Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah, so the trench. Well, it'll be interesting now that the leagues almost don't mean anything because guys are just whatever side of the country they're on. The whole thing we grew up with, we get a little nostalgic. The Pac-12,
that's right.
My son almost shed a tear about that. He's like, I can't believe 110 years just thrown out the window.
It's crazy. It really is.
So we'll see how it happens where, the big farm boys of the Midwest used to just win in the trenches versus speed on the coast.
Yep.
I don't know how it's going to play out, but.
Well, interestingly, we're going to, my son and I and one of my business partners are headed to Corvallis tomorrow. We're going to go watch Oregon State play.
Oregon State. Yeah. I've been there a couple times. Yeah. Well, good luck. Good luck on that.
I'm looking forward to it. We don't have a dog in the fight, but it should be some good football. And then we have some business in Portland after that, so it'll be good.
Oh, awesome! Nice trip, nice area of the country for sure.
Absolutely.
So, well, great. So now I got you on here. I'm going to talk to you about. Tell me a little bit about how you came to get into real estate. Did you start in construction first, or what?
Yeah. So it's actually an interesting story, sort of born out of desperation, because it goes back to my childhood when I was a young man. It was in 1992, and my mom came to me and told me that she didn't have $600 to dig my father's grave. And he had died the night before, Jim, in our living room after a 3-year battle with cancer. And this is a guy, I'm one of 10 kids. So stereotypical Catholic Midwestern family, hardworking people. My dad had a great reputation, owned a business for 40 years, but died broke. And while I didn't know how, I knew that I was going to try to right that wrong, because the desperation and the fear and the angst that I saw in my mom's face, even just telling you this now, it's still, that image is still really fresh. And so fast forward, I found, I was starting and building businesses, but I found real estate in 2016. And that's when the light bulb really went on for me, that I could find really passive income in a way that you can't find it through an active business. And so that was sort of the light bulb moment where I said, hey, I'm going to go all in on real estate. And we started Freed by Real Estate and the fund that you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, really to help other families to experience the same opportunities to create generational wealth, but also, Jim, to ensure family harmony. So many times we're buying assets from folks who have a family, and we ask every single seller, because most of our deals are done direct to seller, we ask every single seller, is there anyone in your family that would benefit from owning this asset? And those that say nobody wants anything to do with it, it's just heartbreaking to me, because if they really understood what their family had, they probably would never sell it. And so what we see is oftentimes, real estate investors start, and we have this vision, and the thing kind of snowballs into something, but our family oftentimes is left out, and we don't want that. So we work really hard to work with families who are interested in bringing their families in, their children, their extended family, and help give them sort of a roadmap to follow, to both create the wealth, but also have that family harmony. So when the principles pass on, the rest of the next generation knows how to take it and carry it forward and grow it. So that's what we do. We have actually 12 family members that work full time in the business.
That is a great story, and one of the better potential motivation Mondays for us
Yeah,
in terms of my Froggy Five structure. Well, thanks for sharing that poignant story. I can kind of picture that, and that must have been painful and a little frightening. How old were you in 1992?
I was just about 20.
Okay, so you're a young man. Yeah, you're not far behind me.
Yeah,
Exactly, right. You are aging well.
thank
You're
you.
yeah.
Well, my
So
mother is,
the
she's 92 and looks like she's 60, so I think it's in the genes.
okay, yeah, good genes, and you kept your hair too. Look at that.
So
So
far, I've got some,
yeah,
yeah,
but as a young man of 20, I could see that being a, a poignant moment and an eye opener. And
for sure.
yeah, what you've done around that is really incredible. I love that you kind of care. We started in this business a little bit trying to get into wholesaling. I mean, in the 90s, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad as soon as it came out, like a lot of people, and I got motivated and listened to Carlton Sheets and some infomercials. I thought I was going to do real estate while I was a military officer, and then kind of got smacked a few times on a couple first deals and was like, oh, yeah, maybe I better just focus on what I'm doing for
Yeah,
a while, and then came back to it later. Um, but we all know that like the idea of getting an asset that produces something and land and real estate for generational wealth is like it should be a no-brainer. Some people are just kind of ignoring it now, and there's a whole generation of people that are just fine with renting. And I guess some people think because ultimately you have to pay land taxes anyway wherever you're at, that you're never really truly free of someone else owning something in your land. But still, um, passing down generational wealth, I think is a huge thing, and helping people get to that. Being on the real estate side of stuff, and having a conscience, uh, it's important to us too. I saw something on LinkedIn earlier today where somebody was talking about, hey, maybe in the beginning of 25 and 26, based on supply and demand, the rents will go back up again. And I started to write a post, but I can get lost writing some posts, and I just said, forget about it. But in my what I want to say is regardless of whether you can increase rents again in the future, like, could we put a little more focus on cheaper construction somehow, or like
right.
helping people actually afford rents, or hey, owning their own place, because it's getting ridiculous right now in terms of where we're at. And we can point to a lot of things, whether it's inflation, energy costs, post-COVID. So I love that. Getting back to the wholesaling part, when we first got started, we were trying to do wholesaling, and something about it, the way a lot of people carried it out, seemed slimy to me, and like
Absolutely.
taking advantage of people in desperate situations. And a lot of people say no, they don't, but then there's still so many of them that really do. They really just want to get like ultra cheap price, and it didn't feel right. I said to my son, and he felt the same. It was like, I can't really go down that path. Like we could probably wholesale some things at sometimes, but we're not going to be taking advantage of people, and it happens all the time. But I'll shut up. So I love that you do that.
Yeah, no, we
Work
have
with
done our
families.
share of wholesaling as well, and have realized that the laws here in Nebraska changed to help us, be encouraged to not do the wholesaling, because now you have to have license to sell equitable interest in a property, where in the past we were able to sell contracts without having to have
Oh, okay.
licensing. So the law changed after we stopped really doing any wholesaling of any significance, and at that point we're starting to buy and hold properties, and if we did want to sell something, we would close on it and then turn around and sell it immediately anyway. So it didn't really
Yeah.
affect us, but I know there's a lot of folks that were in that space that were definitely affected negatively by that law.
And there are a lot of win-wins. And I have some friends that who've gotten rich off wholesaling, and they've done it the right way. I think they've had big cash buyers lists, and
Yeah,
I know they create win-wins,
yeah.
but I guess it's just maybe the things I ran into right away were just not feeling that good to me. So that's why I always say,
Well,
like,
what's interesting is that I think in a Jim, when you strike me as a guy that has a heart and cares, and you're not just out to maximize every dollar on every turn. You're really thinking about the impact, and you're thinking about legacy, I'm sure, to some extent, especially as we get
absolutely.
older, we do. But when you care, if you take that same kind of mindful and heartfelt approach to anything you do, including wholesaling, it can be a very altruistic and noble business where you do help a lot of folks because, frankly, realtors in many cases don't understand how to sell properties that are in need of repair, and they don't feel confident that they can get buyers for it. And so they don't, when they're in this meeting with the seller talking about potentially listing, they're talking about, hey, let's get it painted, or let's clean the trash out of it, or hey, let's try to get the cats out of here, or whatever it might be that is going to be a turnoff to their potential buyers. And instead of doing that, if somebody would come in and just meet the seller where they're at and say, hey, how do we help you? Oftentimes, they don't want the embarrassment of people seeing all this stuff in their house. They don't want their neighbors or even their family in some cases to know that they're selling it. There's usually some other extenuating circumstance that on the human side is driving them to be secretive about it. And so I do think there is a place for wholesalers who have a heart and who are concerned about humans, not just deals, to come in and provide an outlet for those sellers, and also a place then for people like us, rehabbers or flippers or buy and hold folks, to have access to deals that are not on the MLS otherwise. So
Absolutely.
I don't disagree at all with what you're saying about how it can feel. At the same time, I think when done well, with that others in mind approach.
Sure, with the good intentions and the heart. And I think the first guy I learned wholesaling from, he did that on his first deal. He made great money, but he essentially helped a lady out who was a hoarder, helped her out of the situation. So I think that probably happened some. So let's talk about the other side of your business before I'm gonna get into asking you about sort of the tools and processes you use across your business.
Sure.
But it sounds like you're I don't know how your family's structured in this game of taking care of things, like rehabbing things, swinging a hammer, managing other people who swing hammers, and then managing the properties. How are you structured?
Yeah, great question. So we actually have 4 different sort of silos, I'd say, in the business, where we're all kind of distinctly doing different things. So we have an acquisitions business that's run by my son, Luke, and he buys everything from single family to our multifamily stuff that we're bringing in for syndication in the fund. And he heads that up. He has a team of folks that, including some folks on the marketing side, but that's his main responsibility. Then we have a construction company. My youngest son, Paul, runs that. And we don't do any construction where we're not, working for retail customers or other investors. We're just working on our own stuff. And Paul manages all of that for us. Then we have a property management company because we hold and manage our own rentals, and we have these syndications that we're doing. We're also managing those assets as well. And my son-in-law and daughter, Ben and Elaine, run that. And then the 4th sort of silo is a finance part of our business, which is where I kind of roll up all the banking relationships and our Fortune 8 fund and the capital raising and all of that. And that's run by a son of affinity, I'd say. He's a little too old to be my son, but I still kind of treat him that way. And his name is Alex. So we got those 4 kind of distinct businesses that we run. We also do, as part of Alex's business, we have a private lending business that we help other investors who are looking for capital take down deals.
Really?
Yeah. So
we got a lot going on.
It's kind of the full spectrum.
That's great. So you guys actually lend from your own fund, like a debt fund, or?
We do. So we have actually 2 funds. We have Fortune 8 Fund, which is a 506C. It's an offering for accredited investors. It's equity only. And we're buying the value add assets that you mentioned at the top of the show and forcing appreciation through, rehab and leveling up the tenant base. That's all on the 506C side. A fair number of the investors that have come in through 506C offerings are not accredited. And so we do spend time getting to know them and building a relationship. And if they fit our ecosystem, they are truly family focused and they're interested in changing their family's future, because that is a very important element of how we think and who we are. It's part of our DNA. Then we have an alternative fund, which is a 506B. That's a friends and family fund that we invite them into. We do both debt and equity through that. So when you set up a fund, you can have multiple LLCs that will, kind of roll up underneath that fund.
Yeah.
And so we have both. We have a private lending business called Freed Funds, and then we have our 506B offerings, and those are different assets that we hold for non-accredited investors.
Okay, great. Thanks for pointing out that structure. I love how it's the whole family business.
Yeah.
We tried to do that a little bit of that ourselves here with Froggy. My oldest son is an audio engineer and musician, so we've been less able to diversify into that. But I was calling him up because this microphone wasn't working. he edits our podcast, and anything creative, we bring him into it.
I love that. Well, the gal that you saw in the background before we started is my sister-in-law. My wife's the CFO. My father-in-law runs maintenance. My brother-in-law does some maintenance stuff and also does some audiovisual stuff. So
that's great.
The needs of the business, we always go to family first and see if there's anybody in the family that can help us. And if they have the skills and they can provide the value, then of course we'd like them to join. And the whole goal there, honestly, Jim, is to not have them just do that work, but to help them buy assets, get them invested in these deals. Because if we have a 5-year hold, for example, and we can double somebody's money in a 5-year period, they're going to go to work every day anyways. The 5 years is going to pass anyways. And so why not start, put the money in, forget about it.
Yeah.
Let us do what we do. And then in a 5-year period, when we exit that position, they're getting a check that they weren't even thinking about, getting at any point. And so it's a real way to bless them financially, but also give them the opportunity to kind of juice their returns as they roll that into the next deal and the next deal and the next deal. And before you know it, you've got a significant holding.
Absolutely. And it's family. And there's so many levels, and we could do a whole podcast just about the family connections, the trust, the communal feeling, the not having your kids, I got to get up and I got to leave this town because there's no opportunity.
Right.
You could build that now. You could do that for your grandchildren. I don't know if you have any grandchildren yet. I have 3 now. They're real small. But
yeah, so
we're thinking like that too now.
The interesting thing is that I'm trying to think of how many people as a percentage, but a very, very high percentage, maybe 90% plus. And that may be confirmation bias, but it's a high percentage of folks. When we talk to them about our business, that family element is so resonant, because I think we're all here trying, if we have families, we're all trying to do better for our families. And so many times, with as stressful as this world is, financial stress, as you mentioned, the inflation, that both parents working, the craziness that's happening at some of the schools. I mean, I don't want to go down the path of politics, but the world is not easier for our children. It's getting more difficult. And as a result, we feel as parents, oftentimes the stress of, how do we ever help our family when I'm just trying to, make ends meet at home myself, let alone pour into my kids. And so we want to create a space and a platform for these families who are able and are interested in taking that step into investing, but don't really have the attention span or the focus to do it on their own, to come alongside us and watch our family do it. And we model for them, here's how you can bring your kids into the business. Here are the things they can get involved in and do. And eventually, when you have a legacy to pass on, they know what to do with it, so that the pressure on their kids, which will be your grandkids or great-grandkids, is reduced. Because I'm guessing, Jim, that society is not going to get less crazy over time. I think the division is not going to get less. I think the whole world is really, really challenging for folks, even in our day and age. And if we can do anything to help them by creating some assets and some passive income that give them just a little bit of breathing room and a little bit of time freedom to express themselves the way God designed them to express themselves, whatever that is in this world, without having to focus so much on making money and going to work and trading time for money. That's really what's driving us. And so if there's families out there that are wanting to do that, those are our kinds of people.
I think guys our age, there's something happening in our generation that's realizing it sort of later in the game and trying to structure these things. And there is a growing number of people in our children's generation that are also wanting to come back, back towards the land, back
Yes.
towards getting off the hamster wheel,
Yes.
realizing that the earlier sort of thing that was taught in the middle of the industrial age, industrial revolution, I guess you would say, of like just plucking people from their families and putting them in a factory, putting them in, relying on some employer that
Yeah.
could take you or leave you at some point, that whole thing. And then people just dispersing because of transportation. I think we've lost a lot as people, but we're starting to realize that our fractured families, people are starting to come back, I think, and go, okay, where's my food come from? I think COVID actually helped with that. People are like,
I do too.
hey, wait, where's my toilet paper? Where's my food coming from? Like, how are we going to survive together?
Yes.
And the more you build these layers of what you have to do with Cap, most of us have to deal with the dollar and, buying goods that are outside of us. But the more we figure out ways to create that
Self-sufficient,
passive wealth
self-sufficient. Yeah.
and stuff, be more self-sufficient. So, man, I love what you're doing. So I'm glad we made this connection. I'm going to dig into some other specifics about your business. There,
Sure.
you're surrounded by all these people you trust and love, and you're getting wealthier together, which is great, and you're helping people. And just you probably live longer. You got good genetics to already live longer, but you probably live longer because of it if you just keep doing it right. If other forces don't break us all down with inflation and energy prices and garbage, being thrown at us. But some of that garbage, for better or worse, is like AI and the tools that we're trying to use when we're getting investors. Some of the hard things we do have to do because it's not that easy.
Right.
As much as you make it look. What are you doing on the technology front, or what's your approach with technology? I don't know how technical you are, processes and tools. I know people in the Midwest are generally just very pragmatic. I saw that when we would go to universities in the Midwest, like especially like North Dakota versus like Ivy League schools. My son was in the recruiting phase, and like when you're in parts of the Midwest, it was like very practical. Like we're still having our kids come to college because they were going to do a job at the end of this,
Right.
So I think when I run into developers and syndicators in the Midwest, I get that approach too. So tell me something about how you guys operate, and what do you think about the technical age right now?
Yeah. So we actually lean into the AI quite a bit, believe it or not.
Okay.
We haven't really found the utility there quite yet. It's more of a novelty for us. I would say the one place where there is some utility is in copywriting or kicking off an idea. Using ChatGPT, for example, is a tool that's great for idea generation and sort of taking an idea and making it, embellishing it, maybe not making it better, but adding some additional thoughts that you can then take and edit and make better. So it takes some of the heavy lifting out of it. Obviously, the other technology that we're using is what everyone else is using in terms of property management software, which manages all the finance, which manages all the tenant interactions. Even the maintenance and construction is all managed through the property management software. We rely heavily on that. We're a people first, systems and processes second, and then from there we deliver a great product, which in this case is caring for our tenants or our investors. And so very, very much a technical or a technology and systems based company as much as we can be.
Okay.
But I will tell you that the secret sauce for us is we lean into and chase after personal connection more than we ever have, because I think so much of the technology and so much of the social posts and the things that we do, even to try to share who we are and our brand and what we're up to, still create this glass around us sort of bubble that without this human connection, we can't really do business with you. And so we're not shying away from the technology. We want to use it to help with efficiencies and make things better, and VAs and outsourcing and that sort of thing as well. But more than anything, with our investors, with our brokers, with our tenants, we're trying to be more personal. We're trying to be less technology driven, which just takes more work.
Yeah.
More energy. But I think that's what makes the relationship sticky, is if we can connect with them and build a relationship.
Yeah. How are you doing on the capital raising side in terms of getting um, new investors interested? Because I've sort of struggled with that lately. I have a 506c fund of funds that we started, and I'm not happy with where we've gotten here in the first 90 days in terms of commitments, to the point that we haven't pulled the trigger because I said we got to hit the first million, and I had all these great deals lined up. And I really went with the fund of funds model for the first time,
Sure.
having done single asset syndications, thinking that really proven sponsors in a multitude of areas will do 50% cash flowing, 50% ground up, and um, we'll do that. And we'll segue later back into my own deals, because I don't want to like try to raise a bunch of money not having a big deal myself, like a constant deal flow with just my own deals. So, but we haven't got as much traction as I thought. And I used Meta for the first time and everything, and then backed off on that. I had AI assistants and trying to find my way with that. I do some LinkedIn, and my son posts some stuff, but I'm not a huge social media guy. I guess some people make a ton of money off of it doing it. But how do you navigate this, and how are you finding it? Do you have enough personal relationships already built up, or you have a base of people, or are you getting new investors these days?
I love the question, Jim, because especially when you're raising capital, we have in our minds this finite number of people, because we'll look through our phone book or we'll look through our, email list, and we'll say, okay, I, know 2,000 people, and I'm going to get through that list really quick. Right. And it's going to be difficult for me to go outside of that. And then think about, well, I need to be an influencer. I need to be some kind of a social media guy that is attracting people to me so I can, raise capital and do these deals. And what we've learned is that, yes, we need to do that. So it's a both and approach, right? We're going to do the social media. We're going to do a certain amount of podcasts and have conversations with folks we don't know and get to know them and, expand our connections. But more importantly, we have a very structured approach to how we get to know potential investors. And you remember, our investors are both accredited, but they're also families. We won't deal with somebody who's got a bunch of money but isn't interested in including their family, which sounds crazy. You think,
Okay.
well, just take the money and go. Well, if they don't fit the culture and they're not about including the next generation, we don't want to just create generational wealth. We want to teach the next generation to do the same. If they're not willing to do that, then they're probably not a fit. So a couple of examples. We have every Thursday, we have a standing happy hour. And you might be thinking, oh, great, we're going to go to the bar, everybody's going to get hammered, go home, show up late for dinner, their wife or husband's going to be upset, they're not going to see their kids. That's not at all what it is. We actually we live on a lake here in Nebraska, so in the summertime, or when the weather allows, we have them to our house, and it's the family. You can't come to the happy hour unless you bring your family. And so the kids are swimming, we're going on the boat, we're not even talking about business. We're just doing life together, and that's kind of the entry point. We also have which is what I think is kind of unique, a family real estate investing meetup. A lot of times you go to the meetup and it's an individual who represents a family, but the spouse isn't generally there, and their kids certainly aren't there. And so we want them to come, because how hard is it when you get excited about a deal or you get excited about a relationship and you come home and you want to talk to your spouse, and they have had a completely different mindset that day. They're not even thinking about anything. They probably had to take the car to the shop, or the kids aren't doing the thing, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so the alignment in those meetups is really an incredible first step for connecting with us. We also have coaching, and we have a mastermind, all family-based stuff, because we want to do all of this. Again, I'm beating a dead horse here.
Yeah.
We want to do it as family. And so it's very much a relationship-based approach. It's very much go slow now so we can go fast later. And, the saying, yes, Chris Voss has a saying. Have you ever heard of Chris? He wrote a book called Never Split the Difference.
Oh, yeah.
So I co-authored a book with Chris called it's called Empathetic Leadership. And so I've spent some time with Chris.
I saw that.
And one of my favorite things that he's taught me is yes means nothing without how. And so we get we get this idea that I'm going to have all these people on social media or through uh, AI raise their hand and say, yes, I want to do this. Well, what we do in a 506C is a very complicated business. It's a very difficult transaction. It isn't once you've done it several times, but for somebody new, they just raise their hand. I don't know them. They don't know me. How in the world are we going to get in business together for 5 years unless we've gotten to know each other? You're not. I still believe, Jim, that people do business with people they know, like, and trust, and you can't build know, like, and trust through social media. It's got to be, I think, shoulder to shoulder with guys or face to face, whatever activity it is, and connecting with people on a deeper level, because then we have a permanent relationship. And I'm shocked at the number of times where we'll be talking to a family and the spouse or the one of them will say, hey, Susie and John need to come here because they run into the same issues that we do. And when you get a family environment where everybody's thoughts are considered, it becomes a really sticky and supportive place, instead of one spouse doing their thing and the other one feels left out. Or how many times have you seen or heard a guy gets crazy about real estate, goes out and pursues this big dream, ends up getting divorced because his family is left behind, and he's left there at the end saying, what in the heck did I do? I pursued all this for them, and now here I am by myself. So that disjointedness we try to bring back together to say, hey, you can create wealth, but you got to do it together. And if they do,
that's incredible.
We got a place for that.
That is, that's a unique perspective, the way you laid that out. I haven't read that book. I did see that you wrote that book. I meant to ask you about that, but I love the perspective, and you're the first guy that's said it to me that way in the last 10 years that I've been paying attention to real estate, and almost 6 now doing it full time. But it makes sense, and it matches with a lot of our philosophy as well. When a lot of it throughout my years as an engineer, many years I worked from home, and I had to telecommute in the late 90s or in 2000, I guess. And I was trying to do that to pick a spot where I wanted to live. My wife's originally from New Jersey. I had family in Ohio and grew up in Florida. So we didn't have that. It's just central. Hey, we're all Nebraskans. So we decided, we picked a spot here in central New Hampshire that fit what we wanted to try to regrow our roots, I guess I'd say, family roots for the future. And a lot of times I had to do uncomfortable things to spend more time with my wife and kids, because so many things in society wants to pull you away to travel here, travel there. So that was a big driver for me all along, to be around my kids while they were growing up, and now be here for my grandkids. And my one son lives right next door. We built a cabin over there.
I love it.
What you're saying makes perfect sense to me, because lots of times, you got guys interested in doing a deal. Yeah, I'll put 100,000 in that. And then you're like, oh, I got to talk to my wife, but then bring the wife in later. And the next thing you know, it's not really happening. But you bring the bigger point, like so many people chasing wealth that probably started in that direction to create better things for their family, and they end up divorced, and it's sad and painful what people do these days. So I love that you're building that in your business, and you're right. It does take longer. It does take longer when you're at your age, but it's probably worth it in the long run.
It is, because if we go slow up, it's not. It doesn't necessarily take longer. That's sort of a myth, Jim. Because I think,
is that the myth of it?
I think so, because what we find is it takes more time to connect with a family than it does with an individual. Especially, and this is true of most relationships that I've seen, where one of the spouses is like, "Let's go," and the other one is like, I'm not so sure. That's me and my wife. Okay. It's okay. It's absolutely okay. The power, Jim, is when my wife can talk to the spouse that's like, I don't know. Because Lucy, my wife, has felt that hundreds of times, that about every single time I bring her something new, she's like, I don't know.
Bingo. And it is more, I know we're not supposed to talk about genders being different anymore, but the guys are built with more risk in mind, as a generality.
By the way,
9 times out of 10.
God made us to go out and conquer and to hunt and to kill. It's in our DNA, brother. It's nothing to be ashamed of. and I'm glad
And
it is, because that's how
our
we.
wives are like, I want the security. I want to take
Yes,
care. My children need to be cared for. My grandchildren. Like, where's
awesome,
my money today?
awesome.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we are too. Because I every other day, and then you're
Well, and
like, and I'm like,
I have a
can you just say
handful.
yes as soon?
I can give you a handful of
Go ahead.
examples that are the opposite of that, but it's rare. It's generally that the husband is the one that's out chasing these deals, and then the wife comes kicking and screaming, and we just are like, that's not harmonious. That's going to be a temporary
Yeah,
deal for you guys. If you want to go put your money somewhere that your wife doesn't agree with, we're not it. Go do that. But if you and your wife want to join us and you want to see how we do this together, then yeah, we are your community. And so the challenge
that's
for all of
awesome.
us, Jim, I think, is as real estate investors, do we want to be known for finding great deals? Do we want to be known for our business strategy? Meaning, I'm good at value add, I'm a contractor, I can level up tenant base, or do we want to be known for a culture? And I think the stickiest thing that we can be known for is who we are and what our community is about and how do we treat people. The deals are the deals. Some are going to be better than others. And we don't find all home
Yeah,
runs. Sometimes we find a base hit. But if we're doing this as a community of people who all want to accomplish the same thing, the risk tolerance and the hold period and the business plan can be met by these individual people within that ecosystem that are all aligned on what we're trying to accomplish, because some have a higher
yeah.
risk tolerance than others even within that ecosystem. So that's what
It makes
we're
sense
trying
when
to
times get
accomplish.
tough. Exactly. You as the sponsor, that's going to make all the difference in the world. Because at the end of the day, they put your trust in you, and they're like, we know Michael and Lucy. Michael and Lucy are in this with us.
That's it.
We know who they are. We know how the family operates. They're telling us. They're communicating with us. I recently broke from some partners I was doing a lot of business with for a couple of years, and their lack of transparency was one of the reasons. Right, I walked away from, you know, well, I won't get too much into it because I'll put this out here. I won't even edit this out. I'll just say they weren't transparent enough. A, B, when things weren't going well, the one main partner I was 10% partner in this, um, didn't want to communicate with the people, but that's a slippery slope. I mean, to me, when something bad is that, you communicate right away. That's what you
Absolutely.
do. You want to
Absolutely.
head straight into it so everybody knows. They don't get blindsided. You don't wait until you just make it better, because if you don't make it better, and it just snowballs. So that kind of trust is what you're building. But this segues into my next question for you, where things go bad sometimes. So you didn't get to where you are right now without having at least one bad experience or something you had to pull out of before it went into flames. So can you share with us something that you learned the hard way and then you adjusted based on it?
Yeah, for sure. So you might not believe this, but a few years ago my wife said to me, I will never let you take on another partner again. We're a 506c, Jim. How many partners do we have? Right? Our whole business is based on partners. Well, that story is sort of rooted in a pretty tragic event where a lifelong friend of mine, lifelong 20 plus year friend and business partner, um, took his own life just a few years ago. And I got a phone
Mm,
call from a banker who's a really close personal friend of both of ours in sharing this news with me. And you could have knocked me over with a feather, because I have done life with this guy. What I'm talking about, how we treat families, that's how we interacted with his family. And so to have this happen was shocking. And then to find out later that after being interviewed by the FBI and the FDIC, that my business partner was accused of fraud. Um, it was the only time in my life that I've ever felt betrayal. I've heard people
mm,
talk about feeling betrayed. And the reason I felt betrayal, Jim, is because I felt like I knew and trusted this gentleman and had gotten to know him over years. But to find out what he had done to our partnership, we had 40 properties together. And of that group of 40 properties, he had taken about $500,000 out without my knowledge. And so, how does that happen when you're partners? Well, the operating agreement showed that he's the managing member, and I was not.
mm,
And so he had the authority to do that, and I trusted him. And so I had no reason not to believe that he was using the money for the right reasons. Turns out he wasn't, and it cost me and my family a significant amount of money. But that was a choice, because we could have, and my wife and I had this conversation, we could have said, hey, let's just let the bank foreclose on that group. And, we've got it's like a blended family. He had his holdings, we had our holdings, and we had some together. Well, our holdings wouldn't have been affected, but we're a family operation. This is where the family dynamic cuts both ways. If we didn't have a family involved, it would have been much easier for me to say, the banks are going to be the ones that take this hit. It will hurt my reputation, but it hurts my reputation. Now, if you have 12 family members involved, and some of them most of them are younger than you, and they want to stay in the business, that reputation is everything. So we could not let the banks be left holding that bag. So we sat down with each of the banks, and there were 6 different banks that we had loans with, and to a bank, they all agreed to work it out with us. But it was only because we sat down and listened to the fraud that they had perpetrated on them by this gentleman, and said, hey, while we're being painted with the same brush, we had no knowledge and no experience and no involvement. And by God's grace, we were protected from that. But they worked it out with us. And so we were able to write the checks. We had to sell about 12 properties to pay for the upside down that we were in the remainder. But now, by God's grace, all of that is cleaned up. We can walk into any of these banks now. They now know that what we went through and the choice that we made to make it right with each of them speaks to our reputation, speaks to our character. So when my kids go into the banks are saying, what do you need? Instead of, don't come in here. We saw what your dad did. You're not welcome.
Yeah.
And so now what we do differently, to answer your question directly, is we don't enter into partnerships unless we're co-managers or I'm the manager. Because I'm not going to let another partnership or another LLC where I'm not going to start another one unless I'm in control of it. Because
that's a tough lesson learned.
It's a tough one.
Another poignant story. Boy, you got a couple of them. I mean, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate your partner did that. It's even more unfortunate that he got himself into a position where he saw no other way out.
Yeah, and
both of those things. So that's very tragic.
He's got a beautiful wife and 4 children, Jim, and so it's like
really that's heartbreaking.
It really
be
is.
that close to. But I'm glad you did everything you could from your side of the equation for your sake and for your families.
It was for my family.
So
it was for my family, because I remember thinking I was so betrayed and hurt by what happened. Like I was just this guttural response of, he took advantage. I was a victim. I felt like a victim. And laying in bed with my wife, and we just kind of looked at each other and said, we got to do the next right thing, because this isn't about us. This is about our legacy. And if we want our grandkids to be able to walk into any of these banks in Nebraska, they got to know that we did the right thing.
Wow. That's an incredible story. I think the next thing I was going to, so this is hopefully takes us to a happier place.
Yes.
On the other side of this, and that is your best deal to date. What can you share with us about something where you just, everything clicked, you lined it up, and you're so happy that I'm proud of this deal?
Oh my gosh. So it was our first multifamily deal of any size. We bought a 90-unit, or it was an 88-unit building. And we didn't have any investors. I didn't think I could take it down on my own. But we negotiated enough of a discount that we were able to get the bank to basically finance the majority of it and have a seller carry the balance. So we had to come out of pocket on 88 units. I think we had to come out of pocket like 20 grand because it was in so bad. It was in such bad shape. But it was because of that, price was negotiated down very, very low. It appraised, to give you some perspective, it appraised at about $4 million the day we bought it, and we paid about $3 million for it. So we then spent 24 months. I had a 2-year seller carry on it, interest only, And so I had 2 years to get the property upgraded and get the tenants upgraded. And so we went to work, and we were doing about 4 units a month to get through the rehab as quickly as we needed to. And in 21 months, we had 54 of the 88 units done. We added 2 additional units by converting a community room, and got those cash flowing. We have now waiting lists at the property. We've got tenants who have referred friends and family to the property, and we just refinanced it in January. And to take out the seller carry, it appraised in about a 2-year span, appraised for $7 million. And so,
Wow.
yeah, it went from a $4 million value to $7 million. We owed the $3 million, right? Plus we put about $800,000 of our own capital into it for rehab and renovation. And so our all in, just call it $4 million. When we refied, we got 70%-ish loan to value. So we ended up walking away at closing with a check for $1 million. Still own the property.
Nice.
The check for $1 million is tax free because it's debt, and the tenants are paying the debt off. And so that's the biggest home run to date. And that's what spurred us
awesome.
to start syndicating, because I knew if we could do that on value add at scale, we could help a lot of people. So that's why we started the
Yeah.
fund.
Wow. That's a great deal. So the 800,000, did you take out a loan for 3.8 million with the care, or like whatever the difference was? Did you do that, or did you?
Yeah. So
did
we
you
had
equity? Yeah, you did.
we had actually 3 different. The capital stack was first position with a primary lender, second position with a seller carry, and then I secured a line of credit with my portfolio that I have of other properties, $1 million line of credit, using that portfolio as backing. So that's where we came up with that
Nice.
capital.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you. That
Home
one,
run.
that
You guys
one deal,
obviously
Jim, is like family. It changes your family forever. We're netting, after everything's paid, we're netting about 10 grand a month on that one building, and we got $1 million in cash at closing. So
it's a game
that's a
changer.
game changer. Yeah, and not all deals are like that. I mean, you and I have had our share of losers too, but man, when you get one of those, it's kind of like when I play golf. I hit one good shot, it makes me come back for all the torture for these other rounds.
You just want to walk off the course. You want to drop the mic and walk away, but now you can't.
Right.
Now you set the bar up there. You got,
right.
Especially being tax free. I've got burned by a couple tax things in recent years, so they start using better tax strategies. But that was a good one. How you set that up, that was great. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Going back to your Warning Wednesday story. If we do this, sometimes we're doing it by day, sometimes not. I'm putting out stuff out,
Sure.
Just experimenting with shorts. You have some really good sound bites you've already given us for sure that are incredible. But I think my mentor, who helped me make a lateral move in 2019 into real estate, because I was sort of at the top of my game as this engineer contractor, and that was my struggle when you're at that stage in life of like, I really want to get over here because I'm not really happy with where things are here, but I don't want to go all the way back to the beginning, like I'm 20 years old.
Right.
How do I do that? So and he said, come and vet these deals for me. I'm out in Michigan, and my kids were grown, so I was like, I'm blessed with a wife who's been flexible. So I said, well, I'm flying out and I'm bringing my wife. So she came into the conference room, and I kind of had them interview me with my wife. To your point, I learned that.
That's great.
Smart enough to learn that by my 40s, and he has at any given time, he's been doing real estate about the same age as me, but he's been doing real estate since his 20s and syndicating since maybe 2006.
Wow.
With family and friends, and then working from there. So he's got 400 to 500 high net worth credit investors at any time. But the one thing he's adamant about is he's got to be the single manager on his syndication.
Yeah.
Because the people trust him. The people know him and trust him, and I guess that's what people must evolve to, based on these situations where they, you have a bunch of people. At the end of the day, they're relying on you as the single manager to communicate with them, to problem solve, because problem solving is the biggest part of this as well. I think.
No question.
proving that you're a problem solver again and again. So that resonates with me. I just wanted to touch back on that. So I'm going to have to let you go pretty soon.
Yeah,
I
for
got
sure. I actually have another
started a
meeting
little late.
I'm bumping up against here too, so I don't want to be disrespectful.
Okay, we're almost at a hard stop. Did you have a 3 o'clock meeting? Are you late for your meeting?
No, I'm not late. I have a
Or no?
3:15.
Okay, good. We'll get off here in just a minute. I want to pick your brain on one more thing here,
Sure.
and that is the financing part. So you're lending money. I don't know if it's micro lending or if you're lending a lot, like you're lending to other people that are trying to do small rehabs
Yeah,
or
so
what?
it's a variety of things. It's all commercial lending for real estate related things. So we just got a request this week it was about a $1.4 million loan to refinance short-term bridge loan until they can get perm financing on some commercial property here in town. So that's one option. One example, excuse me. A more common example is somebody that's doing a fix and flip and they want acquisition funding or they want acquisition plus rehab funding. We offer that as well, short term. The term hard money is the term that's usually thrown around. We consider it to be private lending just because
Mm-hmm.
it's hard money is just a term I think that's overused. And so
Yeah, overused, like a loan shark, right? People hear hard money and they think loan shark. What do you only do that in Nebraska?
we don't. We go anywhere in the U.S. We do have
Oh,
we do have some limitations on where we'll go depending upon what the deal is. But if it's
okay.
backed by real estate and we can be in first position on a lien with some kind of securities, a promissory note, or excuse me, a deed of trust or a mortgage, then we're generally okay. And we don't underwrite the
Yeah,
individual. Generally, we're underwriting the property. We
good
know who the
deal.
individual is, but
Yeah, I have people come to me a lot asking me. A lot of times they need a second position thing, like they own X amount of multifamilies
yeah,
and they might need to get 250,000 quick. And usually I'm like, well, it's got to be second position. Well, I don't have a lot of guys lined up. That's why I ask you on a personal level. Like we're often in situations where we're looking for somebody that, hey, we got this deal over here. We're more into like ground up development and land, and sometimes trying to cross collateralize. Like we had a bunch of lots.
yeah,
Um, it's not always easy, but it's good to know. It's good to know. I won't say hard money lender. It's good to know private lender.
yeah, for
And you
sure.
got one, so we're definitely going to advertise that. Are you having any challenges on big challenges with your portfolio based on all these interest rates being high now?
We
Are you having
haven't,
to rewrap stuff for?
yeah, we haven't had any issues, and I think our we've got some rolling over this year. We got a handful rolling over every year for the foreseeable future. But the way we underwrite all of our deals is that they need to cash flow the day we buy them, even before business plan. And so we're not speculating on interest rates going down. We're not speculating on rents going up. We're underwriting it based on the fact that it's going to cash flow day one. So if we do raise the rents by value add and increasing, amenities or improving amenities and leveling up the tenant base, we're sort of building a hedge against future interest rates going up. We don't want that to be a hedge. We want that to be a windfall and keep rates low. But
Sure.
in the event that rates do go up, that's sort of a safety factor that's built in on a value add deal is as long as it's cash flow in day one and we've made improvements to increase the value, increase the rents, we can support more debt or more costly debt, not necessarily more debt, um, down the road if it does mature in a higher interest rate environment. So far we've been good. We
Okay.
haven't been bitten yet.
Good.
Yeah.
Good going. Well, hey, Michael, I know you and I both have to run to other meetings. Thanks for spending this time with me. It's been incredible to talk to you, get to know you a little bit. How can our listeners best get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, for sure. So if you want to have, if we've kind of talked about how investing in real estate is hard, and then you add the family dynamic, and it can be all the more complex. And that's really why we created Free by Real Estate, was to come alongside families and empower them through some strategic investing to create wealth and to teach the next generation to do the same. And so there's really two sort of suggestions that I have for folks that want to reach out. One is anybody that's kind of just looking at investing in real estate but isn't sure if the family's ready for it. I put together a 9-part action guide. It's free. Anybody can look at it, and it's a series of videos. I would encourage you to take it as a family, watch it together, talk about real estate. It takes you from the beginning to the end on what is real estate investing, how do you invest in real estate, and it'll give you a place to have a dialogue as a family and talk about, does this work for us, and what are the things we love and what are the things we're concerned with. And for those that are more action takers, somebody that wants to, maybe they have money to invest now, or they want to, join us for a happy hour or join a meetup or that sort of thing, reach out to us on freedbyrealestate.com.
Okay.
Or I'm also active on Facebook, or if they're looking for like a more personal touch, they can go to realmichaelkramer.com. That's my personal website.
realmichaelkramer.com.
Yes, sir.
Got it. And you got a book out there that they can do, the Empathetic Leader. Is that what it's called?
It's called Empathetic Leadership with Chris Voss, and Chris deserves all the credit. Okay. I'm just riding his coattails on this deal, Jim.
Okay. No, it's good. It's good to ride someone's coattails if you could do it. I'm sure you gave a lot of input into there that's valuable. So freedbyrealestate.com and realmichaelkramer.com.
That's correct.
And we'll definitely encourage families to get that 9-part series. I'll check that out myself. But again, it's been great talking to you, Michael.
Likewise. And, I've enjoyed it. Okay. Thank you, Jim. We'll talk soon.
Hey, thanks for having me on. If anybody else wants to find out more about what we're doing, please come to froggycompanies.com. Check out our 3 different business areas. It's great talking to you, and see you next time.